Same crap, different year. Kansas loses to Kansas State 42-17. They didn't just lose. It was a demolition. It was bad. And I guess we're going to talk about it. This is a live edition of the Paid Podcast. I'm Nick Springer here with Kevin Flaherty. We're brought to you by Emprise Bank, your partner in all things possible, member FDIC. If you're joining us live on YouTube, drop a comment, share your thoughts. I've already seen many people in the comment section on the show, so please continue to share your thoughts, join on the conversation. We'll react to them and talk about them on today's show because today was an unmitigated disaster, to put it nicely, I think. Just a complete ass beating, and not for KU, for K-State. 42-17 is the final score, and really it was worse than I think the score reflects, unfortunately. This was just an absolutely devastating loss for Kansas. KU gets the opening kickoff, fumble to them. They score a touchdown off of it, and then after that, it was basically all downhill. It felt like the game was over with about 4 minutes left in the third quarter. Kansas had absolutely no fight. No response, no answer, nothing. They just basically rolled over and died, which was just really frustrating considering the circumstances coming into this game of the fact that this was the K-State team that, while they had high expectations, they'd come in with a 3-4 record. They had not been playing very well. Kansas had been having a pretty solid season, all things considered, coming into this game. And, you know, at home, new booth, sold out. The crowd definitely showed up for this game. And in the end, it's a tale as old as time. A tale as old as 17 years old, actually, that Kansas comes out and just absolutely lays a giant goose egg. And we're actually doing this live. I wish we could turn the camera on. There's K-State players standing on the Jayhawks logo at midfield right now celebrating this win. I don't even know what to say about this. I mean, this was just a complete embarrassment. You got absolutely pantsed by K-State in this game today, and it's just embarrassing. I don't know what else to say.
Inexcusable offense, defense, special teams, and you had a bye week to fix some things. Typically, Lance Leipold has been really good coming off of bye weeks. They were 5-0 over their last 5, 3 wins over ranked teams. The other 2 they'd won by 30+. Well, now all of a sudden there's a different streak, Nick, in that over Kansas's last 2 games, they've lost by a combined 50 points all of a sudden. And in both of those games, you have kind of the plays at the end of the half where you go into the locker room with some momentum. Yeah. You cut Texas Tech to 21-17. You cut it to 21-14 here with one of their best drives of the season, going 85 yards in 18 plays, taking over 8.5 minutes off the clock. And then you come out just like against Texas Tech and you have an opportunity to close that gap, to tie it, to, whatever, and you don't do it. And then you don't do it again. And in this case, Kansas gets a 3 and out. I think Kansas's defense actually comes up with a 3 and out, gets a stop on K-State, gets the ball back. You have the pick that Jaylen Daniels threw, behind Keaton Kubeka, gets tipped up in the air. K-State goes down and scores. All of a sudden, it's 11. You don't have the momentum anymore. And then you wind up having the really long touchdown pass to Jace Brown that kind of put this thing on ice. And I think, when you looked at this game coming in, Nick, it was one of those where you felt like Jaylen Daniels had to be the best version of Jaylen Daniels in order for Kansas to win. And Jaylen Daniels ran the ball pretty well. He was brutal as a passer today. He made really bad decisions with the ball. He almost threw multiple picks that weren't picks, hit multiple guys in the hands. And even when he made the right decisions, he wasn't hitting on those passes. And you contrast that with Avery Johnson, a guy that I think a lot of people, even K-State fans, kind of felt like, hey, this is one position where Kansas maybe has the edge on K-State in this game is Jaylen Daniels over Avery Johnson. Avery Johnson was terrific. Yeah. He got the runs that he needed to get, connected on the deep balls, and you think about the 2 deep throws, and you hate to put it all a couple throws, but you think about the one to Emmanuel Henderson where he gets deep here, you overthrow him, and then you had the seam throw as well, where I do know what he was trying to do. He was trying to get it away from the safety,
to the back.
so that he couldn't get there, but he just missed the throw. And I think when you have an offense like KU's has, they don't have an overwhelming offensive line. The running game has been kind of hit or miss. The receivers were not beating guys in man-to-man coverage today very often. And so you put a lot on Jaylen, and you put a lot on Jaylen on a day where Jaylen just did not have it as a thrower.
Yeah, this was by far Jaylen's worst game of the season, maybe one of his worst games of his career, to be quite frank with you.
100%.
Just looking at some of the throws that he missed that you outlined. Yeah, he had 2 throws in the first half that were guaranteed pick sixes.
Yeah.
like the one on 3rd down and 12 that he threw, that was almost worse than Rich Miller's drop that he had against K-State back in 2023. So, yeah, an absolutely brutal game for Jaylen. You know, I thought in the first half it was pretty obvious that he was just trying to do too much, right? I mean, he obviously had put a lot of pressure on himself, it felt like, in the first half. And I thought maybe towards the end of the half with that long touchdown drive that maybe that would kind of shake him off. And I actually tweeted this, you know, if I had the chance to talk to him in the halftime locker room, I would say, hey, man, you know what? You don't have to do it all, right? Like, you know, let your teammates be your teammates and do their jobs. Just you know, be yourself. And then they come out in the second half, and it's just more of the same, you know, more of the same. He was obviously pressing, obviously playing very poorly. The offensive line didn't help him very much either. Yeah. He was under pressure quite a bit, and he was sacked several times in both the first half and the second half. So, yeah, just an absolutely brutal game from Jaylen Daniels. And kind of like we talked about, you know, leading into this game, is that ultimately this will probably be the legacy of Jaylen Daniels. Rightly or wrongly, you know, in 15, 20 years, people are going to look back at Jaylen Daniels and say, you know what, he was a talented quarterback, but he was incredibly flawed. He, unfortunately, the injury-prone, shtick never kind of went away from him, even though he's been healthy the past couple seasons now. Yeah. But he's just going to go down as a guy that was talented and never, you know, won the big game, never won any big game, and that's just how it's going to be. Whether that's fair or not.
I hate that, but I hate that, but that's one of those things that if you know, we talked about the chance that Jaylen had coming into this to be, if he ends the streak, be the guy that all of us who are here would be sitting around at tailgates drinking a beer 15 years from now and remember how great Jaylen was. Yeah, he broke the streak. And instead, I think that, you know, he winds up becoming a guy where you're like, yeah, you know, really good, you know, was great at times, but ultimately, and he's still got part of the season left, but I mean, unless KU winds up winning all of its games to go 8-4, and I don't know how you can count on that at this point, you know, I think you're going to have a lot of people say, well, the flaws, well, this didn't go right, well, the losses against rivals. And let's take some of this off of Jaylen real quick, because Jaylen didn't get a lot of help. The other part of this, Nick, is Lance Leipold hasn't beaten a rival yet. And I think the thing that I would look at too, I said it already, but the thing that we've always been able to say about Lance Leipold's teams is they compete, and even when they lose, they're right there, right? They don't get blown out. Well, all of a sudden now in 2 straight games, you've got blown out. Like, where do you go from now?
And this today was worse than a blowout. Yes. I mean, today was setting the program back with this type of loss, right?
You have a great crowd, a great atmosphere, and, you know, credit to you guys who showed up. I mean, the bad weather conditions, it's raining, all of those things, and you guys turned out. And you know, I have a lot of respect for the fans who turned out and everything, but it's kind of like, I think it was it Les Miles' first year, and they kind of built a little bit of momentum.
Who is K-State game?
Yeah, they built a little bit of momentum, and they come back here as K-State game, and the fans are so excited. And you just get destroyed, and it killed the fan momentum. And I think it was Sam Mellinger wrote once, I think, about like Royals fans. I think he was saying, it may have been Chiefs fans, but he was saying, you know, hey, there's an issue with these fans. He says they think that is definitely fair. He said there's these fans, and the issue is that they think there's a boogeyman or a monster in their closet. He says, but in fairness, for those fans, there's a boogeyman in their closet. And I feel like that's the thing with KU football fans is other fans don't get it, right? Like they look at it and they're like, oh, you know, you guys are so much better than you should. You should fill the stadium. You should sell out everything. You know, fans should just understand. Well, fans have been kicked in the nuts a bunch. And so it's one of those things that, you know, everybody coming in and filling out the stadium and all of that stuff. You mentioned it early in this game when K-State went up like 14-7, where you said there is a nervous energy in this building, and it was people waiting for the chair to get pulled out from under.
I mean, it was like a light switch. It was like somebody flipped a switch. You could just sense it in the entire stadium. That, you know, this, oh no, here we go again, or this impending dread, this impending doom that hung over the stadium. And, you know, regardless of what coaches or players say, I don't know how that can't affect you. Right. Like, I don't know how there's no way that does not affect you when you're in the stadium, you're down on the sideline and you just know that this entire fan base, 40,000 people are sitting here thinking to themselves, well, here we go again. And I don't know how you don't let that affect you. And obviously I think today it certainly did affect the staff and the players on the field. Right. But again, you can't blame the fans for feeling that way because it's been this way for 16, 17 years now. Right. I mean, even when you do get sort of like the big play to start the game where it should be boom. OK, you have all the momentum. You have everything. Right. Immediately off the bat, you get one play. You already have the ball right away. You go and score a touchdown. That should be, boom. OK, let's go. Here we go. And then K-State just responded. Right. And that's where, we've seen those moments happen to KU in this rivalry and KU never responds. Right. That's the other part of it is like, and I mean, I think I said it on the show and I'll say it again, like, it's just the difference between a team expecting to win and a team hoping to win or even just hoping to compete, which is what it felt like again today. So, you can't blame the fans for feeling the way they feel, and I think it hurts, the players and the staff. But, I am also to the point now where, like, Kevin, I mean, this goes beyond Lance Leipold. This goes beyond Jaylen Daniels. We're talking about 17 years of this crap, right? Like, I don't know what else to say about it.
And today was a giant step backwards too, because each of the last 2 years, you can call them KU losses. They were KU losses, but KU outplayed K-State in those two games. Yeah. Even with Cole Ballard at quarterback, the last time they were here at David Booth Memorial Stadium, Kansas outplayed Kansas State, and there was a play or two that K-State was able to win. Last year in Manhattan, KU outgained K-State, has each of the last two games, and then in this one, you come out, Nick, and you just get smashed. There was. I don't think there's silver lining when you lose a rivalry game anyway. I said that after the Missouri game. Yeah. There is no silver lining to this one. It was just a gigantic step backwards, and a step backwards, Nick, when you had just a ton of recruits here, you had the chance to really showcase your program and all of these good things. Look, Kansas is probably going to rebound and beat Oklahoma State next week to get to 5-4. And so, like, the short-term damage might not actually be that much, but I think the long-term damage, is something that, we may wind up talking about for quite a while.
Oh, absolutely. This was a program-defining game for all the reasons that we outlined, which is the fact that K-State was kind of – they weren't limping in. They had a big win against TCU, but obviously their season has not been what it was. You have a sixth-year quarterback who you expect, to play well in a game like this. And you have a coach in Lance Leipold that, you expect to be sort of that steady presence. And it just wasn't the case. And, that's kind of another thing that I was thinking when you were talking about, Lance Leipold teams and what they've done, competing and all those things. The other biggest trait of Lance Leipold is that he's steady, right? He doesn't really get too high or too low, generally speaking. And it was just it was just brutal. I do want to spend a little bit more time talking about Lance Leipold, talking a little bit more about this game and maybe where KU goes from here coming up next. If there is one bright side right now, if you're in the Kansas City area or the Lawrence area, that is the Kansas City Chiefs. Calling all Chiefs fans. You could be on the field inside GEHA Field at the 50-yard line for the official coin toss of the Chiefs home game this season. Visit Chiefs.com/GEHA now. Enter for a chance to win to be on the field for a once-in-a-lifetime view of the pregame coin toss. Plus, you can score the exclusive prizes. Enter for a chance to win at Chiefs.com/GEHA. GEHA is a proud partner of the Kansas City Chiefs. More KU football talk, unfortunately, is coming up next.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
This is the Paid Podcast, a live edition of the show coming to you from David Booth, Kansas Memorial Stadium on a rainy, dreary, sad Saturday afternoon. And that pretty much also describes my mood, Kevin. Rainy, sad, and dreary. KU gets absolutely smashed by in-state rival K-State 42-17. A brutal loss like we kind of talked about to open the show. Not much positive to take away from it. And we kind of started to touch on it before the break a little bit more, but let's talk a little bit more about Lance Leipold and kind of what this game means going forward. It's a brutal loss. It sets the program back, right? And I think you kind of touched on it, the fact that, you know what, Kansas is probably going to end up winning next week against Oklahoma State, and they're probably going to be 5-4. And there's a decent chance they finish the year going to a bowl game, and maybe if they are able to pick up a couple more wins, they end up with a 7-win season, 8-win season, right? But I just wonder now. Obviously, in the heat of the moment, we're doing this, 30 minutes after the game ended. But in the heat of the moment, I just wonder how much that will really matter. If KU ends up, going 7-5, let's say, and maybe they go into Ames and win against Iowa State, or they win here against Utah, they beat Arizona, they beat Oklahoma State, they go to a bowl game, maybe they win that bowl game. I just wonder how much that will really matter in the grand scheme of things, because this really feels like a tipping point, I think, for a lot of Kansas fans on the discussion around Lance Leipold.
Yeah.
And the fact that, you know what? I've talked about it. I've said it on the show. Like, in a lot of ways, I think he was the perfect coach for Kansas to hire back in 2021, because he is such a strong foundational program guy. So much of what he's about is, building up this program, and he certainly has done that, right? But now you enter into this situation where has he hit his ceiling, right? Has he hit his ceiling as a Power 4 FBS head coach? Is there more that he can offer? And where that conversation kind of goes. And, after a game like today, I think it's hard to suggest that maybe that might not be the reality that Kansas is going to be faced with. But so I just wonder how much of the rest of the season can that flip the narrative? Will that be able to flip the narrative about where this team is at with Lance Leipold, or is this in your mind, Kevin? Could this truly be like a breaking point? Like, you know what, this game is the reason why Kansas may have a new head coach in 2 years or whatever it may be.
I don't know if it'll be that sort of breaking point. I think it's hard to calculate the damage of what we just saw, honestly. But I do think, when you look at this recruiting class, if Kansas can keep them together, and if they can finish strong this year and keep them together, I think it's a class that has a better caliber of player than what Kansas has typically been getting. And so I do think there's some bright things kind of on the horizon, but you got to keep that recruiting class, Nick. And, if I'm K-State and there were some of those guys that I liked, I'd be calling them tonight, right? And saying, hey, do you want to roll with us or do you want to roll with them? And I think when you look, I like the way you put it, in that I do think that Lance Leipold was a good hire. I think Lance Leipold is a guy that is a culture guy that sets up his program for success by being steady day in and day out. The reason KU hasn't traditionally gotten rated in the transfer portal has been because they communicate really well with their players. And so guys know all of those things are strengths, but I think we're starting to see that, hey, right now, in particular, Kansas is struggling to make the adjustments necessary on Saturdays to win football games. And I don't know that that's always been the case. Somebody brought up Andy Kotelnicki earlier. I joke around about, hey, they should run a lot more option. But part of the reason I do, Nick, is that makes you so tough to prepare for because nobody else does that. And so I think that there are things that they could do to make some changes, to clean things up. I thought, overall, the run defense today was not nearly as bad as it has been. But I do think that Lance Leipold brought this program from where it was down here and everything, and kind of elevated it to where we're sitting here pissed off about being 4-4. Yeah. And, and we're sitting here pissed off about losing to K-State, which KU was doing earlier. But I think a lot of people were kind of looking at it in 2019 and 2020 and just basically saying, hey, we lost K-State again, no big deal. And so the expectations have been raised. And I do think that people need to really evaluate it and look at, okay, in this situation, there's multiple schools of thought. But I think that when you look at the money that Booth gave, when you look at what Lance Leipold is making, you're not paying to go 4-4 and get run off the field by K-State. You are paying for bigger results than that. And I think that when you look at all of that into it, I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, fire Lance or whatever. I think that you're getting into a dangerous spot there. But I also think that, context is important. And, I think when you look at, a lot of people are probably going to see this differently. When you look at Oklahoma this year, Oklahoma is having more success this year than they have because Joe Castiglione didn't say Brent Venables isn't the guy, let's get rid of him. What he said was, what does Brent Venables need to succeed? And then basically they came together to kind of, you brought in Jim Nagy, from the Senior Bowl to help evaluate talent and take, some of that off of him. They did, brought in a new offensive coordinator. They made some changes, and Oklahoma is better this year than they have been. And all of that is to say, I think there are still so many steps that you get to before you're sitting here saying Lance Leipold's got to go.
Yeah, I've seen some comments in the chat. Just to be clear, I personally am not advocating for Lance Leipold to be fired. I just want to make that very clear. You're still at a pretty delicate point in where this program is at, right? I mean, you're in the process of still trying to finish building a new stadium. You're still at a bit of a sketchy spot for the program to be making a coaching change. So absolutely, I would not fire Lance Leipold, just to be clear. But you do have to evaluate, right? And kind of like you outlined, where this program is at now, I mean, let's just be honest. It's been stagnant over the past couple of years compared to, when you think about initially where it seemed like the trajectory of the program could potentially be. And again, today was obviously a huge step back, right? Yeah. Because not only did you lose the game, you went back to 2019, 2020 era of this rivalry where you just get dominated, right? Yep. The last 2 or 3 years, you were still losing the game, but as you outlined, you were right there. You were there, right? You had chances to win those games. Today was not that. Today was a huge step in the opposite direction of just getting absolutely bullied and destroyed and ran off the field in front of your home crowd, in front of all this energy that KU had. And so, I would disagree with what Homework's saying in the chat, which is this is a full rebuild. I don't think it's a full rebuild right now. I mean, if you were to take the most extreme stance of, you know what, Lance, you're done. Goodbye. Tomorrow, yes, you would be entering into a full rebuild again, but that's not going to happen. And so there is real question about where KU goes from here, from the rest of the season, right? But I think we talked about it in our preview show as well. It's like in the process of continuing to elevate what KU wants to become and what KU is trying to become, this is a ceiling on that. This game against K-State, like you have to overcome K-State, it feels like, to really start to have the conversation about taking very, very real serious steps forward as a program. And so as long as KU can't beat K-State, it feels, rightly or wrongly, like there is a cap on what this program can be. And today was sort of a litmus test of that. And obviously Kansas failed pretty disastrously.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, Nick, is this game felt a little different in terms of, I think there's been a legitimate complaint in previous years where you could say Kansas State takes this game more seriously than KU does. And Lance Leipold being one of those culture guys, he's very much like, the most important game is the next one, right? Yeah. Like, let's get better today than we were yesterday. And all those things that people, quite frankly, don't enjoy hearing, but actually, typically lead to success as a football program. But this was different, Nick. Like we talked about heading into this one, KU this offseason, when they were training, and going through conditioning, when they would get to the fourth quarter part of training, they would have to watch and listen to the final 5 minutes of K-State's game last year. When they were going around the complex, Jaylen Daniels said, yeah, we're seeing and listening to So it felt like that whole excuse about, well, it's their Super Bowl and we don't care that much was not accurate this year. It felt like the things were set up for Kansas to basically come out and be like, you know what? We're pissed off because we had to sit on that last year's game for so long. But instead, you wind up, having the result that you did. And again, it was the same thing as the Texas Tech game in that you get momentum before halftime. You go into the locker room. You have a chance to come out. And if you score on that first drive and tie it at 21-21, every K-State person here is absolutely nervous. KU has all kinds of momentum. You go 3 and out, get a stop, and then you throw a pick, K-State scores a touchdown. That's 2 games in a row where KU has had a chance coming out in the second half, and they haven't been able to do it. 2 games ago, UCF, they came out, they got like a field goal, then they got like a field goal. They haven't been able to put the screws down to start that second half in the way that they've needed to, and it's led to 2 consecutive double-digit losses.
Well, that's the funny thing about this game, Kevin, is in the first half, there were moments when KU was down 21-7 where it felt hopeless. It's like, okay, well, this is already over, and there's still 10 minutes left in the second quarter or whatever. But then they go on that long drive to score a touchdown, and you're down 21-14. You think, okay, well, shake off what happened in the first half, right? A lot of weird things happened in that first half. You had obviously the way the game started with the fumble kickoff by K-State. Then you had the bad snap on the punt as well that resulted in a K-State touchdown. So it was a weird first half. But at the end of the day, you were only down 7, and you had the touchdown towards the end of the half, and you thought, okay, let's get something going in the second half. And kind of as you mentioned, KU comes out and is really unable to do that, right? We've talked about Jaylen Daniels. A lot of it did have to do with sort of the struggles that he had. And, there were times where Kansas was able to run the ball pretty well. I do think probably the lone bright spot of this game was Daniel Highshaw. Yeah. This was his best game. And I also think it was the game where he was the healthiest. So it makes sense. But he was running very aggressively. The touchdown run that he had was pretty impressive.
Yeah. It looked like he had no business scoring there. And Jaylen was good with his legs as well. I mean, you take the sack yardage off, and he had 80 yards on 13 carries. I mean, you'll take that every day of the week. But, it's outside of that running game, they did not have much. When they dropped back to pass, Jaylen was pressured. Jaylen didn't make good decisions. Jaylen didn't make accurate throws, and the receivers weren't getting open. And it was just an all-around failure of the passing game in this one. And on a day where Kansas State was able to throw the ball. I mean, Jace Brown was running around open for the entire game. It felt like it, kind of toasted Austin Alexander on the long touchdown that kind of put a pin in everything. But I mean, that was a major difference too, was, K-State's passing game clicked and Kansas's didn't.
Let's take one more quick break. When we come back, we'll kind of wrap up some more final thoughts from today and where KU goes from here and more. That's all coming up next.
Chiefs Kingdom, I have got a question for you. What is your favorite touchdown? Well, for me, I can confidently say that my favorite touchdown, it's the next one, because with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, every touchdown could bring you closer to cashing in. From the first touchdown score to anytime touchdown props or the thrill of live in-game betting, every snap is loaded with opportunity. From spreads to money lines, same-game parlays, regular parlays, you want it, DraftKings has got it. Here's the best part. Bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. I use DraftKings Sportsbook, and you should too. Your team hitting pay dirt pays out to you. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN to turn $5 into $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, fees may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bet must win to receive reward. Minimum minus 500 odds required. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
This is the paid podcast, the live edition of the show, live from David Booth, Kansas Memorial Stadium. I'm Nick Springer here with Kevin Flaherty. If you're joining us live on YouTube, there are 3 things that you should be doing right now. 1, you should be subscribing to the channel. 2, you should be liking the show. And 3, you should be leaving a comment like so many other KU fans that have already done so. We really appreciate the comments that you leave. And yes, we do read them. So if you say mean things, just know that, yeah, we read them. We see them. But really appreciate those of you that hang out with us, especially after a day like today. Obviously, a very, very disappointing loss. Probably the most disappointing loss of the Lance Leipold era, truthfully, considering how it was kind of built up leading into the game. So if you're with us now, that means you are a real one. So a huge thank you to those of you that are here. And again, if you haven't already, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and also leave a comment as well. And so, yeah, it was really just a domination by K-State, especially in the second half. Kansas had no response. This was a pretty lifeless game from KU, especially basically from about 5 minutes of the third quarter on. You mentioned it earlier that the 78-yard touchdown pass to Jace Brown from Avery Johnson when it was KU had cut it to 28-17. One play later, it's 35-17 with about 2 minutes left, 3 minutes left in the third quarter. That was pretty much the game at that point. Yep. It didn't feel like Kansas had any mustard left to come back from that one. And yeah, ultimately you get run off the field by your rival again at home in front of a sellout crowd. There was real, fan energy behind this. Love the attitude from Tatan Haka. Mexicans love capable. Yeah, sometimes it's how it feels. Truthfully,
we have been through the desert. It's there have been darker times than this, but
yeah. I mean, it almost left speechless with this game. I mean, Kansas got pretty much dominated from start to finish in this one, even despite the fact that you ended up, I think if you take away the sacks, Kevin, you said KU outrushed K-State.
Yeah.
I believe they actually had more time of possession than K-State. But it was the turnovers really that hurt Kansas. Yeah. Obviously, that was
everything felt hard too. I mean, no explosives whatsoever. I mean, even when you were throwing the ball and having success, it was like, okay, a 7-yard completion gets you to 2nd and 3.
Yeah.
And the most successful thing they did in the passing game were those little middle screens that they were running. I mean, it was mostly that and dump offs. So
yeah. I mean, you kind of mentioned it to me, I think earlier in the game, but obviously the weather today, I think played a little bit of a factor. It was cold, kind of on and off rain, but one side I think didn't fear the weather, and the other side did. I think that K-State didn't fear the weather, right? They were willing to throw the ball down.
They went out to exploit the weather, it's interesting because I was a very, very bad high school player. And
I was not a high school player at all. I didn't make the team.
And we ran the wishbone, but one of the things our coach always said is the time to throw it is actually when it's wet out, because a DB slips and you've got a touchdown. So K-State went out sort of with that mentality of we're going to take some shots and give our guys chances to make plays. KU kind of balled up and said, whatever we do, don't turn this thing over, go short. And so it was a very different way that they approached this game, which this KU offense, I think, Nick, has shown over the last 2 weeks last 2 games. When you look at the Texas Tech game and you look at this one, you have to have explosives in this offense. This is not a team that is going to find success without having explosives.
Yeah, and Jaylen Daniels took some shots down the field a couple times, right? He overthrew Emmanuel Henderson about 5 yards deep in the end zone at one point in the first half. We talked about the missed seam route that he had to Emmanuel Henderson as well. So it's not like KU was completely not taking shots downfield, but they weren't connecting, obviously, and K-State was, right? I mean, K-State had the deep throw to Jace Brown early in the game. They had the play where Avery scrambles to his right, throws to Jace Brown, that gets tackled at the 1. That was after the interception in the second half. Obviously, they 7-8-yard pass to Jace Brown as well. And so
they had
Jace
like
Brown's
the little one down the sideline, I feel like, to Jace Brown too, where he was open. Jace Brown. And you hit on the post route to Tibbs as well.
Yeah, and Jace Brown's a really good player, right? Like, I'm not taking, I think on the flip side of this conversation is that K-State did what K-State does, truthfully, which is they played a solid game. They didn't make a whole lot of mistakes outside of the opening kickoff, basically. Like they did what they always do in this rivalry, which is they played a solid game. They played with the confidence of a team that expects to win. And when you do those things, guess what? You win more often than not, especially when your opponent is mentally weak at times, which I think is the case for KU as well.
Yeah, and K-State is never going to beat itself in this rivalry, right? Like the whole, if you're going to beat K-State, you have to pull it from K-State. You have to take it. And, I think that's one of the things that hurts about coming out with a conservative strategy or being conservative in this thing is you can't go out to not lose this game. You have to go out and win it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like you have to take it. You have to take it from K-State at this point. And time again, Kansas has not been able to do that, not been able to execute enough to do that. Whether the discussion was around not having enough talent to do it in the past, not having enough talent / coaching, to now it's kind of turned into I think the talent is there, right? I mean, I think this team has the capability to win a game like this, and it just doesn't work out. So really frustrating game, obviously. And like we talked about, this could set back KU in a lot of ways. I guess on the somewhat bright side is you play Oklahoma State next week.
Yeah.
So that's a game you should be able to win. But kind of like I was mentioning earlier, I don't know how much of a end to the season can really bring back KU fans, right? Like there are a lot of KU fans, many of you in this chat as well watching this today, that probably have a sense of, feeling a little bit checked out, right?
Yeah.
On the season after a game like this, after a loss like this, and the manner in which you lose it. And so even if KU was able to come together, just like last year when they came together and ended up winning 3 straight games against ranked opponents down the stretch, is it going to be enough to sort of, keep the fans engaged, keep the fans, excited about this team going forward, and if they're able to make a bowl game? So I don't know. Those are all discussions I think probably for down the road, especially we'll see how Kansas, handles it, I guess, going forward. But yeah, this one really hurts, and this team is going to have to do some soul searching. And, this is where I guess the other aspect of Lance Leipold comes into play, in that we saw from last year, typically these Lance Leipold teams band together. They stick together. And so maybe this game from an internal standpoint doesn't impact this team as much as maybe on the outside it feels like it might, but I guess time will tell with that. So
yeah. I mean, there's no way to know until you see them against Oklahoma State, and then quite frankly, probably after that. But no, for the opportunity that Kansas had, for the atmosphere that they had, for the chance that they had to do something today, to be right there, after halftime, have the football, have momentum and all of those things, and then have the second half go the way that it did. I mean, it was a great disappointment.
Yeah. When I woke up this morning, I had the thought of, the different outcomes of this game. Okay, Kansas, obviously, if Kansas wins big, awesome, right? If Kansas wins by any margin, awesome. But, I was thinking like, well, if it's another close loss, what would that mean versus I didn't really envision this would happen.
Sure.
Like I thought that this would be different. But, where does that leave Kansas? If this was another game where Kansas loses a close game versus what actually happened, would that impact anything? I don't know. Maybe not. But at this point, I think really it's just losing is losing. And, I'm sick and tired of it. I think just like all other KU fans are, especially in this rivalry, it's obviously incredibly, incredibly frustrating. I saw a comment earlier, Kevin, I don't know if you saw it, from somebody in the live chat that said that, we're getting to the point now where you're going to have players for KU playing that weren't even alive the last time KU beat K-State. Like that's the reality we're looking at. And so, it didn't get done, and I don't even know where to go from here. From my perspective, we'll see how KU kind of rallies, but I think homework is kind of right about this point. Like it didn't feel like K-State really out-schemed KU, or it didn't feel like K-State did anything special to beat KU. It just felt like K-State, like I said, lined up and played with the confidence that they thought they were going to win and executed. And K-State did that, right? I mean, Avery Johnson had a really, really strong game today. Yeah. Made some really, really strong deep throws and didn't make any real mistakes. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. But you got any final thoughts before we wrap things up here?
No. I do disagree with Homework earlier, where he said that, hey, this is like, playing Nebraska, like from a personnel standpoint and the size difference. That's absurd. I see all these guys, like I've covered half of their recruitments. I see them in person. There was not a size difference out there. K-State does not have a center that looks like Bryce Foster. KU's defensive tackles look like they should play for KU or K-State. And as a matter of fact, when KU played them, 2 years ago, I had a buddy of mine here who was a college coach. They were on a bye, so he came out here and he said, hey, man, KU looks better physically than K-State does. I thought they looked pretty equal physically in terms of all that. I just thought K-State was better and K-State executed better. And, Kansas had this thin line it needed to walk to win today's game, and they didn't walk it. Jaylen Daniels wasn't good enough. The defense wasn't, the defense got a few stops, but ultimately couldn't keep K-State out, those few times in the second half. And Kansas was -3 in the turnovers, and one of which was, a bad punt snap that, led to a touchdown. You aren't going to win when that happens.
Well, and unfortunately, the more I've been thinking about it, Kevin, too, it's like it feels like inevitably, I guess, or hopefully whenever KU does beat K-State, I hope hopefully in the near future, but it feels like it will be less about whenever it does happen. It feels like it's getting to the point now where it will be less about KU being better and more about K-State taking a significant step backwards, right? Which that hurts because you want to go take it from them. You want to go beat them, when they're good or when they you know what I mean. But I don't know if that's going to be the case. I mean, because today was one of your best opportunities to do so.
That was how they broke it. After the 11-game winning streak, was K-State went to the Big 12 title game and won it in 2003. Then in 2004, Darren Sproles was left. They were kind of depleted. Other than that, they had like a 4-7 team. They came in here and KU beat them, and that was what they needed. And then KU lost in 2005 the next year, but then won in 6, 7, 8. And so a lot of it is about K-State having to come back.
Yeah, which is frustrating too.
Yes.
So the other positive is Darren Peterson looked really good last night against Louisville. We'll probably leave the show at that. Yeah, thank you so much to everybody that joined us today. Really appreciate all of those of you that support us, that share the comments, that join the conversation, that like the show, subscribe to the channel, and please do all of those things because win or lose, we will be live for the remainder of the KU football games. There are KU's 4-4, so 4 games left in the season. I can promise you that we will be live no matter what the circumstances are after those games, and we appreciate those of you that join us and continue to show why you're passionate about this team, right? So really appreciate everybody. And again, please subscribe, like the video, and all that great stuff. Appreciate those of you that have joined us. Tatan Hop pointing out that Sproles was on that 04 squad.
That's what I said. I said Sproles was all they had left. What I was saying basically. Dylan Meyer had like a shoulder injury, so he wasn't, super great throwing the ball that year.
Look, Tatan Hawk, you should know better than to test Kevin on his obscure early 2000s football.
There was actually a pretty awesome deal after that game. Not that anybody wants to hear it now, but Sproles said that it was one of the loudest stadiums he had played at. And if you were here, not only was the entire stadium filled, and back then it was 51 pretty much, but there were another few thousand people out on the hill, kind of watching on that flooded in, after the game as well. So it was a pretty unbelievable thing to witness, honestly.
Yeah. Well, hopefully KU can have that experience again in the near future. Obviously not today after just a complete demolition at the hands of K-State, 42-17. The streak lives on. It goes to 17 games. And Kansas lets pick up the pieces and try to finish strong the rest of the season. So, and like I said, we'll be there. Charles also in the chat talking about basketball. We'll be doing both. We're doing both.
We will not back down from football, but we will also bring you basketball.
Yes. We will continue our football coverage, but we are very excited also to be getting into basketball season and talking more about KU basketball. We had a chance to go to Big 12 Media Days earlier in the week. If you want to hear a little bit more about that, you can check out our previous show from earlier in the week as well, talking about that. So, we're going to be doing both. We're pulling double duty. We'll have you covered on all your football and basketball stuff. So really appreciate everybody. But that's about, I think, going to do it for this edition of the show live from Dave Booth, Kansas Memorial Stadium. For Kevin Flaherty, I'm Nick Springer, and we'll talk to you again soon. See ya.